Hey everyone, in this video I'll be upgrading the motors on my tiny hoop. I've been putting around in my tiny hoop with the stock motors and having a blast, but swapping out the motors has really waken up the quad. You can see the flight performance in my other video on how to build a tiny hoop. I'll put a link in the description below versus the video you'll see at the end of this video. This tiny hoop with the upgraded motors will easily lap the tiny hoop running the stock motors. So I'll be building, I'll have two tiny hoops, one running the Micromotor Warehouse fast motors, which is already installed in my original tiny hoop, versus the new Lumenier RX0615 motors. These are the fast motors. So I'm guessing that these motors from the Micromotor Warehouse and the Lumenier are exactly the same motors, just rebranded. They're both 6mm by 15mm, weigh 1.8 grams each. They're both 14,000 kV, and they take voltages from 1.5 to 4.2 volts and have a draw of 1 amp at 3.7 volts. So the only difference is the price. At the time of this video, the Micromotor Warehouse motors are, I think, $23 for a set of 4 versus the Lumenier, which are about, I think, $19 for a set of 4. And each set of 4 comes with 2 counterclockwise and 2 clockwise, and they're designated by the color of the wires. So the black and white ones are the counterclockwise and the red and blue are clockwise. I'll show you how to install these in a little bit. And I'll also be comparing the Micromotor Warehouse MyLipo batteries versus the Lumenier 20525C batteries. So both have nearly the same specs, except the Lumenier is 1mm shorter and supposedly weighs half a gram. I've been measuring a whole bunch of these batteries, and it fluctuates from half a gram to, like, I don't know, a couple tenths of a gram. So on the specs, they're pretty much the same. So the only big difference is the price. The Micromotor Warehouse batteries are about $6 each on Amazon, and these Lumeniers are like $5. So they're so cheap, go ahead and pick up a whole bunch of them. So let's go ahead and get the swap going. So these tiny hoops are so easy to build. I'll show you from start to finish how to build a tiny hoop with upgraded motors. So what I have here is just a regular 5.8 gigahertz camera with VTX combo. I've got my camera mount that I'll be showing you how to use later. And then I'll be using these upgraded Lumenier 205 milliamp batteries. These are really important if you're running the upgraded motors, because with this battery it'll give you about a run time of about 4 minutes or so. But if you're running the stock batteries with the upgraded motors, you'll probably get about 1 minute of flight time. So it's really important to get bigger upgraded batteries if you're running the upgraded motors. And then these are the Lumenier RX0615 14,000 kV motors. And then I have a basic Inductrix that's bind and fly. Alright, so first I'm just going to take out my Inductrix. I won't be using this cover, so I'm just going to pop it off. First, we're going to swap out the motors, because it's easier to do the motors and then put on the camera. So the motors come in a set of 4. There's a black and white lead, and then the red and blue. So the black and white will be the counterclockwise motors, and they go here and here. And then the clockwise motors will go here and here, just like that. All right, so first we're just gonna remove the propellers from the quad. The easiest way I found is just get like something curved or whatever. I'll just show you how to do one of them, and then you can kind of figure out the rest. So just get something curved. I'm just using these curved tweezers and just stick it under here, under the prop, and just pry them off, because these propellers are just put on by friction. And it'd be easy if you just left your prop like in the corners of the quad to kind of help you remember where they go. And then under here there's a little rubber band that holds the wire. Just go ahead and slip it off, put it by your prop, and then you're going to unplug the wire under from the board, and they just pull out. And then to remove the motors, you just grab the bottom of the motor and the top of the frame and just kind of push them out. Like, they're a little firm, so you just gotta get a good grip and just squeeze them out like that. Once you get the top part out, you can just pull it out and then pull out the motor wire. So there's your stock motor. So this is, let's see, this is the front of my quad. So I'm gonna put a counterclockwise motor here, which is the black and white. So I'm just gonna thread the bottom of the connector through the mount, and then I'm just gonna push my motor onto this hole, push it all the way in, and then just plug in the motor like that. And then when you're done, you can just put the propeller back on. It just goes on by friction. Spin it, make sure you don't have it on too tight, and then you'll just take this rubber band, and then you'll just kind of wrap this motor around the motor. The leads that come with these upgraded motors are a little bit longer than the stock wires, so you just have to roll it up a little bit and then put the rubber band on. It's kind of messy like this, but I'll redo them later. You get the point. So I'm just going to do the same thing with all the motors. So once again, this is the front of the quad here. So black and white wires, red and blue, red and blue. So I just finished swapping out the stock motors with the upgraded motors. As you can see, this is the front of the quad here. So I got the black and white motors here, and then the red and blue is here and here. You can see I've got them all plugged in, and then I got the rubber bands kind of holding the wires back. So just a quick tip, when you're swapping these out, it's easiest to do one motor at a time, because if you take all the props out and all the motors, it gets a little confusing on what goes where. So now we're just going to finish building our tiny hoop. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the camera mount, so I'll know how much motor wire how much camera wire to cut on this one. So I'm just going to use this little 3D printed motor mount that I made. So first thing you do is you unscrew these 3 screws right here. Alright, so you just take these screws out. And then when you're doing this, make sure you lift the little antenna off the board, because if you mount it with the antenna on the board, you're going to get some weird static lines. So I'm just going to thread this antenna through this hole. And then it's going to go around here. And then on this mount, there's a tiny little hole right here. I don't know if you can see it. Right there. It's to hold your antenna wire so it doesn't fly all over the place. So, and then you're just going to put the screws back in. Alright, so I just screwed the motor mount onto the frame, so I'm just going to thread the antenna through this little hole. So that'll just keep our antenna in place. So next we're just going to mount our camera. So uncurl this. And then I'm just going to place it where the camera mount goes. This is double-sided tape. I'm not going to stick it yet. So I'm just going to measure how much wire I need to cut. So this is where you solder the camera onto. The lead closest to the screw is negative, and the one next to it is positive, of course. So you're just gonna kind of measure out how much wire you need. You can just kind of eyeball it. You don't have to get it perfect. There's no cheat sheet for this one. cut this, and then you're just gonna splice the wire and tin it. Alright, so I'm just gonna twist the leads just to make it a little bit nicer. Okay, so I'm going to do the negative lead first. The negative lead is the one closer to the screw. Make sure you don't burn your motor guards or propeller guards while you're doing this. Bam, that's it. So once you've got it soldered on, I'm just going to remove this little piece of double-sided tape that's on the mount. So if you're not using this mount, you'll just have to do it the traditional tiny hoop way, just mounting it with rubber bands and stuff like that, but that's so messy and it always falls off, so I don't like to do that. And this mount is centered perfectly to where you can see enough front of the quad without too much of the props. And it's also, I don't know if you can see, it's got a little 7-degree mount, so when you're tilting you got a nice field of view. Okay, so that's the tiny hoop with upgraded motors right here. So we're gonna take it for a flight and we're gonna compare the Luminaire motors on this one versus the Micromotor Warehouse motors on this one. Once again, the specs on both of these motors are the same. They're both 14,000 kV. These are the fast motors. The Micromotor Warehouse has the insane motors, which supposedly supposed to be faster, but I've heard there's a lot of PID tuning problems. There's some oscillations with those, so I didn't want to mess with it. As you can see in the video that I'm about to show you, that well, for me, these motors are plenty fast. As you can see, the upgraded motors on the right is way faster than the stock tiny hoop on the left. Flying the stock motors, it feels like you're maxing out on the speed on the tiny hoop, whereas the upgraded motors, I'd say this is only about 75% of what the quad can do. Given more space and skill, it can go even faster than what you see here. And I promise you this video is not sped up or anything. With the extra thrust, it's actually easier to fly because the quad is much more responsive and actually has a little bit of punch to get you out of trouble. With the stock motors, there's a big delay in thrust. When you punch the throttle, you have to wait a little bit before the quad will actually respond or move up and down. And my dog has gotten smarter ever since I upgraded the motors. She knows she can't outrun it, so she usually just dodges the tiny hoop, so I gotta chase her a little bit and make her run. My dog loves my tiny hoop. So between the two motors, I didn't feel any real difference between the Micromotor Warehouse motors versus the Luminaire motors. Both of them, well, same thing with the batteries. Both quads flew about the same and same flight times, around 4 minutes or so. But the Luminaire motors and batteries are cheaper, so I just go with those. So if you're new to FPV and tiny hoops, you can use the stock motors to learn how to fly. But once you get comfortable flying, upgraded motors and batteries are a must. It's so much more fun when you have more power because it's so much more responsive. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.